Please be seated. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. One God. Brothers and sisters in Christ, we're having this Sunday a particular, what you might call, interlude, as it were, in the cycle of readings that we've been hearing. As I've been sharing, during the summertime, we have these readings from the Gospel of Matthew, and they follow this course where it focuses on life in the church, discipleship. And so we're presented ideas about that in these readings. And they tend to be miracle readings. That's a lot of what we've been hearing in the weeks leading up to this. And when we get into August, later August, we'll start hearing stories from the parables that are in the Gospel according to St. Matthew. But if you notice in your bulletin, it's saying there's this commemoration of the Holy Fathers of the Fourth Ecumenical Council. And I know in saying that, for many of you, that's okay. That's nice, Father. Right over your head. But the Gospel reading and the epistle reading that Andy did for us are focused on this particular commemoration. And they're bishops. So we can get into the weeds about what's this Fourth Ecumenical Council and what happened there and who was there and what they did. And that's a worthwhile history lesson. But for the purposes of what we can look at and what we can focus on, it's more on the idea of bishops and the role of bishops in life of the church. The Orthodox Church is a hierarchical church. I have a bishop over me. He's over our parish. It's Metropolitan Sava. He's the head of the Antiochian Archdiocese of North America. And that's not something abstract. We can talk about bishops in the abstract. We're Orthodox, there's a bishop and all of that. It's very particular. And part of what we look at is the particularity of our faith. You cannot be Orthodox in some abstract sense. If you are a member of this parish, you're a member of St. Luke the Evangelist. It is a parish in the Ohio Deanery of the Diocese of Toledo of the Antiochian Archdiocese of North America, under the Patriarch of Antioch, specifically. That's kind of the organizational chart. It's specific for a reason. There is in an early writing of the church, there's a group of writings. They're called the Apostolic Fathers. And these were typically bishops who wrote. They were contemporaries of the apostles. And so the writings they have are contemporary with a lot of the writings that we have in the New Testament, especially the letters of St. Paul. One of these was St. Ignatius of Antioch. He said, where the bishop is, there is the church. The particularity of having a specific bishop says that there is a church. Now, what we see in the life of our parish, Metropolitan Sava has never visited us. He sent us Father Jeremy as his representative. So we have someone sent on Metropolitan Sava's behalf to visit us. Father Jeremy's been here a couple of times, and that's his role. He's the Metropolitan's representative in this area. And so part of what I try to impart to all of you with that visit is we treat Father Jeremy like it's the Metropolitan coming, even though he's quote-unquote just a priest. Specific, particularity. Well, how do we see the bishop present in the life of the church? Some of you may not notice this. There's a chair over here. You may not notice that. And in some of the services, I come out and I sense the church. And the first thing that I do is I sense the chair. And people will make the mistake because usually the chanters are behind the chair chanting. I'm sensing them first. It's the chair. That's the bishop's chair. That's Metropolitan Sava's chair. If he came to visit, he would stand there. And if you notice, we keep an icon there. It's Christ as the great high priest. And if you look at how he is dressed, he's dressed like a bishop. He's wearing bishop's vestments in him. And that's to remind us that the bishop is our great high priest when he comes to be with us. I shared this with some of our new folks in my class last week. So I was talking about when I come to church in the morning, I begin to prepare, and there are a number of things that I do before we start services. The first thing I do is a service where I venerate all the icons and ask for God's help in serving liturgy in the morning. And before I do those prayers, the first thing I do is I stand in front of the throne and I bow and make a matana. Basically recognizing that I serve because the bishop lets me serve here. And later on in this service, we have the great entrance. We put the gifts on the altar. And at that point, I've unfolded a cloth that's on the altar. It's called the Antiochian. It's a picture of it's an iconic representation of Christ being taken down from the cross. But on that, it has Metropolitan Saba's signature. And you see, before I come out, I sense, and then I kiss the cloth. I kiss the wounds of Christ, and I kiss the Metropolitan's signature. It's basically showing I have permission to do what I'm doing here, because he gave me that permission. There's conflict in the parish. This has happened. Not anywhere near me, not in my recent memory. But if a parish gets unruly, and gets in their mind that they're actually Protestants and they want to do their own thing and not listen to the bishop, and it's gotten to a point where it's not reconcilable, kind of the more severe course of action is that the bishop sends a representative to the church and he removes the cloth from the altar. He says this parish no longer has permission to offer liturgy there. And if you try to do that, you're just kind of pretending to do a liturgy. The cloth has to be there. I think the last idea on all of that is when a priest is sent to a parish to be the pastor, he has a letter from the bishop, and it basically says, you have my permission to be my priest in this parish as the pastor. And if something changes there, another letter comes and says that's rescinded, or it's you're now going to go over to this parish over here, you're going to be a part of that one there, you're not here anymore. It all rides on the bishop. So that kind of looks at a lot of the particularities of the bishop. I want to shift focus here a little bit. I want to look at that quote that I gave you. Where the bishop is where the church is. A phenomenon that we're experiencing in the life of the Orthodox Church is that people are showing up in droves at parishes. It's happening here, and it's happening at all these other parishes here in Cleveland, Ohio, the rest of the United States. I know that one of the things that we celebrated at the beginning of Holy Week on Lazarus Saturday is that I baptized and chrismated 13 people into the church. That's 13 new members. And kind of the interesting is during that period, because it's a traditional time for baptisms and new people in the church, going on in social media, you would see pictures from all of these other parishes of the same thing happening. Sometimes smaller than us, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes larger than us. Parishes where they've had 50 to 100 people in one fell swoop come to join the church. These are usually larger parishes in big metropolitan areas where that happens. And the number someone gave me, apparently someone is tallying this. Something like 50,000 people came to the Orthodox Church during that week in the United States. So it's a phenomenon, and people keep coming. Part of why they come is, of course, they have a need and a yearning, and they go searching. And they search on the internet. That is the good thing that we have on the internet. People are finding out about us because of the internet. The difficulty is that people can remain stuck on the internet. And it can play out in different ways. Something that I heard a couple of weeks ago is apparently there are people who identify themselves as Orthodox Christians because they've read, or they don't read on the internet. You look at videos and you listen to podcasts. And they've looked at enough videos and read enough podcasts that they said, I'm an Orthodox Christian. And they've never darkened the door of an Orthodox church. And this is the problematic part. mistake the Orthodox faith for content. What we know. And that's a very, very Protestant mindset. I read my Bible, I got this straight. I listened to this pastor who told me this thing. I have all the facts and figures straight. So I am a Christian of whatever type because I figured this out in my head. To be sure and certain, a big part of the faith is content. Let's go back to this commemoration. Holy Father's Fourth Ecumenical Council. There's a little thing in the bulletin. There was a dispute, an argument. It was a point of doctrine. And they argued about that. And it was because a certain group of people was teaching something incorrect, and it needed to be corrected. That's a content thing. And I know that's where people can stumble, because it's like, what's the detail on that particular content? The bigger issue is that you had a group of people who were teaching incorrect things that were leading the rest of the people in the church astray. It's not just content. It's community, as it were. It's being here and doing what we're doing right now is just as important, if not more important, than the content. The content comes through what we're doing here. We have readings. I'm preaching. There are things in the hymnody that teach about the faith. But how is it done? It's done in a place together where you're committed to being with one another and living that life together. So kind of that initial thing of, it's good that people find the content online. And they say, this is interesting. And a lot of them are getting to the point where they say, I need to go to an Orthodox church and see what this is all about. But then it has to become about this thing, not the thing online. And so as you come into the life of the church, it's more important what you do here and what your church directs you. For better or worse, our bishop gave you me. If it's the questions, come to me, not the internet. If it's recommendations on things to look at, come to me, not the internet. You don't need the internet. If you're spending more time on the internet looking at videos than you are coming to church, you're doing it wrong. If you spend more time listening to podcasts than doing your personal prayers, you're doing it wrong. If you are doing more to kind of engage in these battles and conflicts and argumentation, because there are people on the internet who thrive on that, who supposedly are Orthodox authorities. I don't name names on purpose. That's scandalous. But often they're laymen, and it's the question of who's their bishop, and can they teach that? Don't listen to them. I can recommend things. And part of that is when you come to the church to be part of the church, it has to go from information, the content, to formation. How do we do this thing together? And how do we live a life of Christ together? And if you're doing your faith development as do your own adventure, there are those old books. You get to a page. Do you want to do this or this? And you turn to another page. And then, oh, do you want to do this or this? You can choose the path. You shouldn't be doing your own adventure on this. And the internet is rife with do your own adventure orthodoxy. Now I'll say this. The internet is not your bishop, and the church, well, the internet is not your bishop, and the internet is not your church, but in the good sense. And I will give this as a place to look. Your bishop is on the internet, and your church is on the internet. Now, His Eminence is on a hiatus right now, but something he's been doing pretty consistently for the last 2 years. He's taking a break for the rest of the summer. Every week he issues a teaching. And every week I include that in the weekly announcements. Read that. That's an easy one. It's not glamorous. He doesn't have great production values. Usually when I get it, it's like this very basic PDF. And then it's posted on the Archdiocese website. But here's the difference. We're the only jurisdiction that I can think of where the bishop stands out and teaches weekly. It's a short article. 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. It's not arduous. It's not high school, let alone graduate school. But he speaks of things that are crucial about our faith and our faith in the world today. That's the easy one. Read his Eminence's articles. The other thing is, if you're looking for things, again, I said I have very specific suggestions. I'm actually in the process of developing a list of resources because I haven't said enough on this. And I'm troubled that people are looking all over the place for all sorts of different things. But as a starting point, if you want books or listen to podcasts from Ancient Faith, that's okay. Ancient Faith is actually a department of our archdiocese. It's a ministry of our archdiocese. And everything that's on there is vetted. If you are a potential author and you want to go to Ancient Faith and you say, I have a manuscript, if you're a layman, you have to have a blessing from your priest, who will probably check with the bishop. And if you're a priest, you have to have a blessing of the bishop to submit it. And some of you may know Father Andrew Stephen Damick. He's the content manager, content coordinator, or whatever. Kind of the head editor of Ancient Faith. Something Father Jeremy shared with me. Everything that's submitted to Ancient Faith, Father Andrew reads. So it's been vetted. And so that is okay, and that is good. And kind of the last one. This is more of a pitch, as it were. I just kind of stuck this up on the bulletin board because I got it at the Parish Life Conference. In October, St. Matthew's, over on the other side of town, they're having Dr. Jeannie Constantino. She does podcasts and books on Ancient Faith. She's a biblical scholar. She's a college professor. She has a seminary education. She'll be doing a day-long retreat at St. Matthew on the Book of Revelation. And the Book of Revelation is the big boogeyman out there that everyone gets wrong because all of the weird dispensationalist Protestants have hijacked it to turn it and pin the tail on the apocalyptic donkey, as it were. When's the end of the world coming? And I'm going to read the tea leaves of what's in the news broadcast. And this thing's happening over here. The end of the world's coming. She will explain what that means from an Orthodox understanding. And let me kind of round this all up. I want to bring it back to some of the things that were at the beginning of that reading. It's an image for you. It says, you are the light of the world. And it talks about a city set on a hill. It's 2 images that we're given. Part of why we have this reading on this day where we talk about bishops is it says the bishops are the light of the world. The light of Christ is given through them. There's a prayer I'll be doing at the liturgy here a little bit later. Among the first, be mindful of our Father, Sala. It goes on. And it says, rightly dividing the word of thy truth. It's a prayer to say, he's the bishop, keep him in mind, and make sure that he's doing his job properly. He's the teacher. I'm the delegated teacher. He's the teacher. He is supposed to give us light. That image, a city set on the hill. In the ancient world, cities were built on hills, and they were fortified. And the idea there is if you were somewhere outside the city and you were in danger, you could see the city. Imagine traveling at night. You see this lit city in the dark. And you could go into the fortified city and be protected. That's the image we have of the church. And that's why there is this importance about talking about where we get our faith. Content. but also how we live our faith. Life together, community, within the parish. But then it gets to this more specific thing about, well, we read this from a gospel, it's being used to talk about bishops. But if you read this reading, it's Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount talking to the faithful. So a more important point to me. You are the light of the world. It's not you need to become the light of the world. You are the light of the world. You have been given something. You are growing into something. But you've already been given something. You have the light of Christ. Part of why people are coming to the Orthodox Church, it's not just that they found us. It's because there's a need out there. I spoke with a few people this week about this. This all happened, this growth, after the pandemic. I don't like thinking about the pandemic. It's probably the worst couple of years of my life. And was probably the hardest thing I ever did as a priest. And I think we all had similar sorts of things. Imagine people who were unmoored, who had no place to look, living in a world where there was fear and uncertainty and death. And all of this back and forth that we have. The dispute about that, how to deal with all of that. I think for many of those people, it was such an unsettling experience that it brought fundamental questions. Why am I here? What is this about? How am I supposed to live? Does someone care about me? And then finding us. And that's that. We see the true light. We receive the heavenly Spirit. They see the light here. They see us as that city on the hill with the fortified wall. We have things like councils where we tell people you're wrong and that's incorrect teaching. And part of that is because what you're teaching is cruel and leads people astray. It's not that we're fussing about little details. It matters. And it means something about your salvation. You are the light of the world. So we live this life together. Just kind of wrap it up. Of course, I have kind of the cranky old man. Get off the internet, except for like an Ancient Faith or the Archdiocese website. Readings from the Metropolitan. Everything else you can do here. Everything else I can talk to you about. But parish library, we're developing even more. We have things we can read here, and I can point you in the direction of what you can read. But we have that on this Sunday. We do these things to build our life, both to make us brighter, but also to be that bright light for others. Glory to Jesus Christ.